And welcome into Cards 365. Grant Salzman, Brendan Schaefer here with you. A big Cardinals Cubs rubber match today. But Brendan, before we get into baseball, you just enjoying the outdoors? What's going on?
Yeah, man. I'm out here in God's country this weekend, so I thought I'd hop on the phone with you at least to talk a little Cardinals baseball. It's like I was on a moratorium, though, until the Cardinals won a game. I didn't want to come back on the show, so they decided to get it done yesterday, allowing me to return this morning.
That's perfect. It was definitely not planned before the week, so that's right. Cardinals take on the Cubs today at 5:10 p.m. It's part of a Sunday night baseball doubleheader. The Cardinals are, I guess, the main game on ESPN. I believe the Padres play after. I think that's starting on ESPN2. Might transition over to ESPN. Eric Fetty, Matthew Boyd, and Brendan. It's a rematch of the pitching duel that we saw just last week that saw the Cardinals lose 8-0.
Yeah, not much of a duel in that one.
No.
Fetty giving up touchdowns in his two most recent outings. And look, I don't know if the wind conditions are going to be anything similar to what they've been the past couple of days, but if that's any indicator, Cardinals might need to hit some more bombs today because it's just, I mean, you knew yesterday would be a high-scoring game. I think the wind blowing out to dead center at like 10 to 20 miles per hour. So that's kind of the nature of the game when you're playing at Wrigley Field and this time of year and the wind being the way that it can be. I don't know that that's a encouraging thing for the Cardinals, and Matthew Boyd, man, they couldn't figure him out. So, like, on paper, this matchup, a little tough, but that makes it all the more valuable that they were able to win yesterday. You'd love to be able to get this series because after dropping the series to the Pirates the way that you did without scoring a run, to be able to flip momentum, especially for a pitching matchup on paper that doesn't feel like one that favors you, would be great to see. But for me, it's probably got to be more of the same, like we saw yesterday with guys like Gorman, Burleson, and obviously Joel Pozo's big swing. The Cardinals might have to just outslug the Cubs if they're going to get it done today. I don't know what the approach has to be, though, against Matthew Boyd, because they clearly could not figure him out the last time they faced him.
This is Card Central 365, brought to you by Gray Bar, your distributor for electrical and datacom needs. Now, before we go in too much to today, let's just talk a little bit about yesterday. I said on the post-game show, it felt like if you win today, that is a season-defining win. It's kind of, if you look back and the Cardinals make the postseason, if they win the division somehow, you'll look back and say on July 5th, that win is what turn things around. Instead of dropping your sixth in a row, it would have been a fifth.
Number 5, yeah.
It would have been 5 in a row. And then let's say you lose the day, it would have been 6. This kept you above water. And I've said the whole time, what you need to do entering the All-Star break is your head above water. Be treading it. And if you win today, and let's say you would go 4-2 in that last 6 games, you're certainly treading water with your head above it. I'd be very happy where they're at. You're probably in a wild card spot too.
Yeah, and they had to get it just to kind of stop the bleeding a little bit. And you got a good enough outing from Matthew Liberatore that it would have been even more of a shame to waste that, given how the starting pitching has not been as consistent recently. I do think, and I'm sure y'all touched on it yesterday afternoon, the bullpen stuff with guys like Matz and Leahy, obviously, JoJo, they got to figure out what they're going to do with that bullpen. And there's really not a lot of great answers because these are the guys that you've been able to rely upon early. And so you just kind of have to ride through the ups and downs with those players, unfortunately. Like, yeah, you can continue to look for opportunities to churn it and to find options, but those are kind of your guys. And I think that's going to continue to be the case. The offense coming through the way that it did, that was key. And like I said, I think it's probably going to have to happen again if you win today. If you lose today, you're still on a downward trend that you don't feel very good about over the previous week with a sweep against the Pirates and then a series loss to the Cubs, if that should come to pass. But like you said, like your head above water, there was a realm in which you're swept by the Pirates, the Cubs swept the Guardians, and then if the Cubs just handled you in 3 straight, that would have been 8.5 games out of the division. It could still be 7.5, but they could 8.5 just felt like too daunting of a number. It's a good thing they were able to get yesterday, and we'll see today. I mean, I'm not counting them out. but I just think they're going to have to win it similarly to how they did it yesterday.
Now, yesterday, I don't know if you can put JoJo's run really on him. He had Kyle Tucker 0-2 getting out of the inning and catcher's interference. But I agree. The bullpen has had its issues. And today we talk about Fetty. What's successful outing for him? Would you take, if you said right now, 5 innings, he gives up 3 runs, would you take that right now?
Yeah, I would slam that button. And that might not even get you a win if Boyd is on his game. But I think at Wrigley, again, I haven't looked at win conditions this morning, but if it's anything similar, I think runs will be scored on both sides, even with the lefty on the mound. 5 innings, 3 runs keeps you in the game. That's kind of the benchmark we've given to guys like Michaelis, and I think Fetty is in that category now too, where, hey, he's had some good runs earlier in the year, but right now you're just trying to give your team a chance. That's all you really are looking for.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think that 3 runs, let's say he goes 5-3 or 6-3, certainly a quality start would give your team a chance. Now, how do the Cardinals attack Boyd? Because they looked out of depth trying to attack him in the box. What's the strategy got to be today?
Yeah, I mean, you're waiting to see too what I don't know if we've got. I'm probably no lineups yet with a night game, so you're waiting to see how many righties are they going to try to force feed in there, because that was something that we saw the last time when the Cardinals played the Cubs at Busch. They had extra right-handers in the lineup for both the Boyd game and the Imanaga game. And I get that, but I also think at that time Lars Nootbaar was kind of going through it a little bit. You weren't so sure about, Gorman against lefties. And now I think it's kind of a deal where you just might have to play your best lineup, and that also is incorporated into who's healthy and available. But like we saw, Gorman, Burleson, 2 lefties were good yesterday. Those guys probably have to be in there. Maybe Pozo gets a start. I know that might be a little tricky because they always want their best catcher behind the plate if they can, and it's Fetty, so you're kind of maybe worried about it anyway. I might just put Pozo back there because you need the potential of a right-handed thump, and he just keeps doing it. I mean, he keeps finding ways to help you offensively. So maybe that's an answer, Grant. I'm not sure, but they just have to be able to swing at the pitches that Boyd's going to give you. There's going to be some pitches. He makes good pitches, and even strikes sometimes aren't the ones you want to be swinging at. But be aggressive early in counts when it is appropriate to do so. I think sometimes they kind of go one way or the other, where they're taking those hittable pitches early in counts that might be the best pitch they see in the entire at bat. And then you get into a 2-strike count, you feel like you have to protect, and that's when they're chasing and swinging at pitches that they'll either strike out on or weak contact because it's not really in the hitter's zone to do something with. So you have to just have a plate approach, that understanding you might not score every inning, but you're looking for that one inning within a game where you get a couple guys on, and then you have to be able to come through with a clutch batting average with runners in scoring position moment to make it happen. That's really the best you can hope to do, I think, against Boyd.
Yeah, and I think too, it might need to be some small ball. We need to see some. Yesterday they had a lot of chances, but you think in that first inning they left runners on. There was another inning that runners were left on third with less than an out. When you get in those situational guy on second with 1 out, guy on third with 1 out, you have to find a way to drive them in, especially against Boyd today. And this is according to winreports.com. Around game time, the wind will actually be blowing in towards the field, about 10 miles per hour. Now, granted, it is Wrigley Field in Chicago. That could change in about like that. Yeah. So, but would you say that if the wind's blowing in, and it's so stupid that we're talking about wind, but
no, it's relevant.
I think that could help the Cardinals. Fetty, couple fly balls that stay in that maybe normally would go out could help out Fetty and the Redbirds, because I think the Cardinals' best chance of winning this game is a low-scoring affair, which you have said seems unlikely.
Yeah, I think that would help to have the wind blowing in, because I think the Cubs have more guys that can take advantage when the wind's blowing out. Not that the Cardinals don't. I mean, we saw yesterday with the 3 home runs, but I think the Cubs, there are just so many, minefields within that lineup, as we saw with Miles Michaelis on the 4th. There are a lot of guys that can hit for power in this lineup. So to suppress power a little bit, but then that means the Cardinals are going to have to play crisp defense. Like, you're going to have to do all the little things that we saw them be really good at doing, I would say, early in the season. Maybe like in that May run when they were so good. We saw them kind of do the little things so well, Grant. And then it's not been as consistent recently, and it wasn't yesterday with some pass balls, or whether they call it a wild pitch or a pass ball. Like, I do have more of an expectation to, have the catcher be able to handle the pitches and catcher's interference. So, like, little things like that I think they can't really afford if it's going to be that low scoring tight game. But maybe Fetty has a 4.5 ERA, which isn't great. It's pretty mediocre, but he's still got that ERA having given up 2 touchdowns in consecutive starts. So that tells you before this little stretch, he was doing something right. His ERA was 3.5, right? So maybe he's got it in him to kind of bounce back a little bit and see what happens. My fear, though, still, and I said this for the Apple game on Friday, we talk about the different baseballs and stuff. If it's a nationally televised game over a holiday weekend and there is any way MLB can influence the balls that are going to be in play, a lot of times you want fireworks. So that would be the only thing that could hurt him if the wind doesn't push the balls back in.
Brock Hoover is saying, how about a Pozo DH spot? I know if something happens to Pajas, you lose your DH, but we can't manage old school NL style ?
Yeah. I would just put him behind the plate. I mean, Pajas isn't going to catch every game.
Yeah.
And I think look, a lot of Cardinals fans don't think that Pajas brings value behind the plate defensively. And so they're like, I see Pozo hitting. I just want Pozo in there. And that's the only thing that matters. So let's just see it. Let's let folks have their way today. And maybe it works out. Look, I think Fetty could give up 7 with Pajas back there. He could give up 7 with Pozo back there. I do think Pozo gives you more power threat, but also let's take this one step further. Like, and look, he can get a base hit just as well as a home run, but Pozo does have more thump in his bat. But if the wind is blowing in and you're not necessarily catering your lineup toward, like, I don't know how much that would play into that type of decision, but you could go that route. Also, though, with an off day coming up, they may not feel like, they need to rest Pajas yet. They feel like maybe he could play today. So I don't know. It's an interesting thought as far as the DH goes. I wouldn't mind it, Grant, but I think they have been pretty reluctant to play things that way and basically not have a catcher available off the bench.
I would like to see Pozo start, I think, today as well. He's hot. Why not play the hot hand? That's what Brock Hoover's saying. I'd rather just start Pozo for what it's worth.
Yeah.
If you look at the wild card standings, the Cardinals are in a 3-way tie for the third wild card spot. They're 4.5. They're 4 games back of the Mets for the first, 1.5 back of the Brewers, and tied with the Padres and Giants for that third spot. And if you had to pick one division to be tied with, it'd be 2 teams from the NL West, one of the most brutal divisions in baseball, Brendan.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to continue to beat up on each other. They do get the Rockies as kind of that little pillow, that cushion that helps everybody out because of how often they play them. Well, Cardinals still get to play them, though. What's that?
So the Cardinals play the Pirates, and they're supposed to be the pillow. And
no, look at those 2 teams. Look at those 2 records. That's different. I mean, you're right. Like, the Cardinals should be able to have a winning record against Pittsburgh. It has very much not worked out that way this year, but the Rockies are different. If the Cardinals start not sweeping the Rockies when they play them, then we can really criticize. But the Pirates, I mean, they're coming around a little bit more than we're used to seeing, which, yeah, that's hurt the Cardinals in the standings. If you had even gained a couple extra wins against Pittsburgh, and they've really handled the Cardinals so far, you'd be in an even better spot.
You would be. At least this year, they handled the White Sox. And if you want to cash in on your baseball knowledge, the All-Star games coming up, the home run derbies coming up, a lot of fun things in baseball, football seasons just around the corner. Download the DraftKings Pick 6 app now and use code STL Sports. That's code STL Sports for new customers. Play $5, get $50 in Pick 6 credits. Better payouts, better wins, only with Pick 6 from DraftKings. The crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 and over. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. 1 per new customer. Bonus awarded as non-withdrawable Pick 6 credits that expire in 14 days. Limited time offer. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos.
Okay, Brendan, while you are out there in God's country, you're gonna be able to watch the the game of the world tonight. Isn't that what we call it here on Sunday Night Baseball?
I think I know that's what John Rooney calls it, so I'm
Yeah.
good with it. Yeah, I'll either have it on the radio or watching it on my phone, one of the two. We'll see what we're doing if we're in transit or anything by then. But I'll be locked in for sure. This is a big one. I mean, start fast would be the way you hope that this could go for the Cardinals. You don't want to have another big deficit that costs you,
Yeah, and before we go out of here, what's just your outlook? 7 games left. What is a successful last stretch here for the Cardinals to get out, go into the All-Star break, and say, okay, we got a chance here halfway through July?
Yeah, I mean, you're hoping. I think the Cubs play the Yankees right before the break. That would be helpful if somebody else could beat the Cubs, because that hasn't happened a lot this year. The Cardinals at this point, they've split with the Cubs, so they're 3-3 in those 6 games, right? And you'd like to gain some ground on them, but you're at least not losing ground in what you played against the Cubs so far. It may not feel that way, but they've been able to hold their own. Winning today would go a long way because it's a 2-game flip in whatever direction it's going to be. You'll either be 7.5 back or 5.5 back after today. I think really it's just about playing that more consistent brand of baseball. You'd like to see some of the starters that have struggled look better, because I'm not sure how much I buy. I've seen the reports where the front office is saying, hey, we'll be cleared to spend some money at the deadline if we, need to add payroll or whatever we need to do as a potential team that buys. I'm not sure like what that would actually look like and that it would happen in any substantial way. But I do think there's still that push to make sure the Cardinals are close enough that they don't think about tearing it down and selling off some of the short-term assets. And look, there are Cardinals fans right here in our chat most days that would say, I want them to sell and trade guys like Helsley. I think that there's enough for this team, though, to keep it together for the most part. I would like to see some creativity at the deadline, but these next, 7 games, I do think it's going to play into how the Cardinals approach things when they get to mid-July, because you'll have that break, and then it's kind of like a sprint to the finish of trade talks and how you're handling that as a front office. So I would like to think that they can at least, do a 4 out of 7 here and just be on stable footing, because like you said, they're tied right now, virtual percentage points with wild card stuff. And so they're not out of anything by any means. You just don't want to give the front office any reason to doubt the players on the field. It's kind of now time to push a little bit and at least set the table to where if a deal comes to fruition that makes sense, they feel like they can attack it and it's worth their time.
And Brendan, do I have good news for you? The Cardinals are only 5.5 back. So
was I off by 1?
6.5 with a loss. Mason Winda says 90 games played, 48-42 record, same as 2024. After 90 games, the high water mark for 2024 was 6 games over. Need to be better this season by the All-Star break. I don't disagree with that. I think if you go 4-3 these next 7 games with a win over the Cubs, you're probably treading water about 4.5 back, 4 back. I think you take that every day of the week.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I thought I lost you here. Give me a second.
I think you're good. I can hear you. I can't see you.
Okay. We're good. No, I was looking some stuff up. I don't know how I got off on the numbers on that, but that's fine. Yeah, they're not. It's even not as bad as I thought it was. So you're in a good spot, but just that proof of concept, because I don't think this is like the main thing a lot of Cardinals fans would say gives them pessimism about the rest of the season is like if 3/5 of your rotation are guys that you don't feel very good about, and then they didn't feel good about them in May and June, but then they really start to crater off. Like Michaelis and Fetty, they're going to have to figure out what they're doing with those spots. And you've got McGreevy that could come in, but you don't really have another, in my opinion, reliable option that's ready after that. Yeah. Palante has really settled back in, so where hopefully fans are giving him some grace of he's not going to be perfect every stretch of the season, but you look at the overall numbers and you feel pretty good about it. But it's really those 2 spots in the rotation right now, Michaelis and Fetty. Hey, a good Fetty outing today would maybe go a long way toward kind of giving a new vision to fans of, okay, I mean, if Fetty's going to still stick around that 4.2, 4.3 ERA because he pitches well today, he's going to have some bad ones, but the good ones are going to outweigh them, then maybe it's just the Michaelis spot that people are worried about. And look, Friday was pathetic. There's nothing to be said about it, but I think they're going to continue to have to monitor him very closely. And if it continues to that level, then as you get toward trade deadline, you go, okay, McGreevy might just be the guy that we slot in and we figure out what we have to figure out with Miles. we'll see if it gets to that point. But again, you can't have multiple guys that you're feeling that way about. So it's a big bang for Fetty to really look. Did well on the Apple game a couple weeks ago or a month ago against the Nationals. Maybe Fetty's going to have some national TV prowess tonight.
Let's hope so. Cardinals Cubs 5:10 p.m. ESPN game of the night. Brendan, any last thoughts about that? I do want to get this comment. Aaron Dotson says a lot is needed for this team. Need an ace, a number 2 starter, a bullpen, star, stud, offensive piece.
Hey, you could use all that for sure.
Yeah.
This was never going to be the season where they were going to go out and like try to add all that in under duress. It was like, hey, let's see internally how much of those things do we have that maybe we didn't think we had. And I think they found out like, hey, Matthew Liberatore is actually a pretty good like number 2 type of starter that you probably were counting on him to be like the Steven Matz role this year. So this sort of runway that we talk about has been useful in so much as maybe Liberatore has you closer to the rotation you want to be when you're really ready to contend. I would say that this year, even if the Cardinals sneak in the playoffs, this is not their contending window. What this year being competitive is doing and showing is that the Cardinals are not like a 3 to 5 year rebuild away from getting all the things that Aaron mentions there that they're going to need. I just think that they basically went in with the expectations were on the floor and they go, hey, actually, Nolan Gorman's showing some pop. Maybe he could stick around and be somebody that actually helps you if you just throw him out there and take the good with the bad. Hey, Matthew Liberatore is actually maybe he's not an anchor to the rotation, but he's close to it. And that's something that you maybe didn't think you had. And so when you start to add some of the young prospects that I think will be on the way in the next couple of years, those guys will then hopefully be supplementing a core that maybe you pay a little bit of money to a Donovan or whoever you're going to re-sign, Mason Wynn, and that gets you a little bit closer to being truly in your contending window. Whereas Aaron says we need X, Y, and Z, they can find a way to trade for those things because it's not that list shrinks. It's not as long of a list as we kind of thought it might be. So yeah, right now to be like on par with the Dodgers or some of those great teams, you need a lot of stuff. But I actually think the Cardinals are closer to being a team that's worth adding to and adding around rather than one that you tear down and say, oh, we just got to let the next guy, Chaim Bloom, come in and they got to draft and develop for a few years before they start spending money. I think they're close. I don't know if they're going to make the playoffs this year, but they're continuing to show that like they're closer than maybe people would have expected with this core.
I agree. Cards Cubs 5-10. I'm going to go 6-5 Cardinals victory. They find a way, Brendan.
I'm going to say 6-3 Cubs. I'm not being a hater. I'm just being a realist. I think it's a tough matchup on paper. Yeah. But maybe the wind will blow in, and you're right. They can have a pitching duel where – but even if it's up to the bullpens, like, do you have a lot of faith right now? I guess the guys that pitched yesterday struggled, and they won't probably be available today. If the Cardinals only scored 3 runs, I don't think they win the game. I think they got to get to 5 to have a really good chance in this game. We'll see if I'm right or wrong. Remember what I said and make fun of me later if I'm wrong. It's fine.
I think so as well. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. Cards Central 365. We will have the post-game show later tonight following the game. I'll be on it again.
Look at you.
We're sponsored by Gray Bar. So if you want to hear me talk again, you can tune in after the Redbirds hopefully win another game and win the series. Brendan, thank you for joining from God's country today. We'll talk to you guys later.